Welcome back with a new lecture in which we will discuss about asexual reproduction in red algae, which is also known as rhodophyta. Red algae generally reproduces through asexual reproduction by the production of non-motile spores. So you have to remember this important property of red algae, that in red algae the motile phase or the motile spores are absent. So they produces a few type of spores, the common which is the monospore. Monospores are the commonest spores formed in red algae, and in this type a single spores called monospore is developed in a sporangium known as monosporangium. So monospore is a single spores which develop in monosporangium. Mono means one, spore means spore. So it is found in Chylenia and Batrachospermum. This is the structure of Chylenia, and you can see this is the vegetative plant, and it bears sporangia known as Monosporangium. You can see here, and this produces spores known as monospores, which develop into on germination. It develop into a new red algae plant. The next type of spore found in red algae are known as biospores or polyspores. As the name indicates, biospore means two spores, polyspores mean more than four spores or many spores. And this type, two types of spores called biospores are formed in a sporangium known as bisporangium. So biospores are two spores, bi means two, and it is formed in a sporangium known as bisporangium. And those sporangium which having more than four spores are called polysporangium, and it is known as polyspore. It produces spores known as polyspores. So polyspores are formed in polysporangium, and bispores are formed in bisporangium. Polyspores are also known as paraspores, and it is found in Ceramium strictum and Plumeria elegans. So these are the two types of spores found in red algae. In these figures, you can see here the monosporangium and bisporangia is given. Monosporangia, you can see here, it contains a single spores. Bisporangia contains two spores, binucleate, and also it contains four spores, one, two, three, four quadrinucleate. These are mono and bisporangia, and this is polysporangia, and you can see here it contains many spores, more than four spores. So these are examples of monospores, bispores, and polyspores. The next type of spore found in red algae are known as neutral spores. In this type, the vegetative cells of red algae directly transform into spores called neutral spores. It is generally found in Bengia. You can see here in this figure, the neutral spore formation in Bengia is given. So this is the vegetative thallus, vegetative structure of Bengia, and one cell is given here. This is the vegetative cells of Bengia, and these vegetative cells you can see here, these directly convert into spores. It is known as neutral spores, and this neutral spore germinate directly into a new thallus vegetative cells of red algae. So this is a very simple type of asexual reproduction called neutral, which produces spores known as neutral spores. The next type of spores found in red algae are known as carpospores. In Polycyponia, which is a member of red algae, a diploid zygote develops into Carbosporophyte. This is a plant which produces carpospores in a sporangia known as Carbosporangia. And this carpospore then develop into a tetrasporophyte plant that bears tetraspores and tetrasporangia. So carpospores are diploid in nature. For example, in Polycyponia, it is after the formation of zygote, which is diploid in nature, that zygote develop into carposporophyte plant, which produces carpospores in a sporangia known as Carposporangia. That carpospores then develop into tetrasporophyte plant, which produces tetraspore and tetrasporangia. So you have to remember this: in Polycyponia, the carpospores are diploid. But in Batrachospermum, the diploid zygote divides meiotically, and then carpospore are formed on Carbosporophytes. So carpospore Our Carbosporophyte plant are haplide in Batrachospermum. Plants are haplide and on germination it developed into gametophytic plants. So they directly germinate into a gametophytic plant without the formation of tetrasporophytes. So you have to remember this in Batrachospermum. The carpospores are haplide and Polycyponia, the carpospores are diploid. So you can see here in this figure, this is the male gametophyte plant, this is the female gametophyte plant. These are the male gametes which come here into the female gametophytic reproductive organ and it developed here into zygote. So this the zygote is diploid in nature, and from this zygote here in this female gametophytic plant, a carposporophyte plant developed which depend on the female gametophyte here. So this carposporophyte plant is diploid in nature. You can see two, and it produces spores known as carpospore, which is also diploid. Carpospore on germination develop into tetrasporophyte plant, which is also diploid. Tetra, tetrasporophyte plant produces tetraspore and tetrasporangium. You can see here after meiosis, this tetraspore is haplide and it developed directly into gametophytic plant. So this is the very important types of spores produces in red algae known as carpospores. The last one is tetraspores. It is formed in Tetrasporangium on a diploid sporophytic plant. So we already discussed it here in the Carbosporophyte that tetraspore or tetraspore are formed in Tetrasporangia on a diplophytic sporophytic plant which is known as Tetrasporophytic plant. Tetrasporangia form four tetraspore either in a row known as zonate, crosswise which is cruciate, or most commonly tetrahedral. So these three types of tetraspore are formed in red algae. You can see here this is the Tetrasporangia which produces tetraspore is a tetrahedral. This is cruciate and this is zonate Tetrasporangia. You can see here. So zonate is simple when the carpospore, the tetraspore are formed in a row. You can see here this is zonate. So these are formed in a row. This is a very simple. These are Tetrasporangia is in a row producing tetraspores. Crosswise cruciate, this is crosswise. You can see here in a cross-like structure. A tetrasporangia is in cruciate form, and tetrahedral you can see here. This is the commonly formed tetrasporangia knitted tetrahedral. All the four sides are the same tetrahedral sides, four sides. The fourth one is on the other side. So these are the four types of tetrasporangia produces in red algae, which form tetraspores. So these are the some of the types of spores which are formed in asexual reproduction in red algae. Thank you for watching.